Hi there, my name's Derek Turney. I'm the Enterprise Account Exec here at Help Me Fix. I'm here today to do a quick run through of the platform itself and the different areas that we provide. So let me start by sharing my screen with you, and I will show you our CRM Contact Hub. So here we have Contact Hub. What this is it's a way and a place for resident or clients to manage their Help Me Fix environment. Firstly, we have a dashboard on the front, very much like anybody would do, which gives you a kind of a breakdown of outcomes. It tells you which service categories you've been utilizing most. It also shows you a quick example of your locations, and I'll talk to you a little bit about those things as well in a second. It gives you an overview how many properties you've got on, and any recent calls that have happened. You can skip through to those quite easily in here. Now, Contact Hub can be autonomous, so effectively a client can be given access to it, can sign up, log in, set up their subscriptions, and really run Help Me Fix from scratch at this point. It very much depends on the client type, but we can allow them access to kind of effectively run their own Help Me Fix ecosystem. So a client would come on, they'd log on, they'd set up their account, then go into locations, potentially set a location. So locations are used as tags. So this is a good way of tagging a group of properties, an area, even things like blocks. You can tag a single block, and then those tags can be used in workflows. Properties is where we store the property information. So all of the properties get listed in here, and under the property, you can add a resident, you can add and remove residents. So here we have my resident, for instance, here, where you can add a new one, very simply clicking a button and adding them. Alternatively, you can generate links from here, so links to the other parts of our platform, being our AI assistant and our video platform, simply by clicking three little dots, clicking into it and selecting your link type. So for instance, you can generate a video link and send that across to the resident. That will text it to the resident from here, or you can generate a QR code and again send that to the resident somehow. For smaller single unit landlords, for instance, what we would envisage is them using multi-session. They'd get that QR code, put that up in the property, and then for the length of that tenancy, that QR code is valid for that individual. But as I say, you can generate links within this side of the platform. You can tag properties. So if you tag it with a location, you're able to then pull that down through into our workflows. The same for Teams. So Teams is really the place or the tag that you would use to push through to certain areas of the business. So for instance, we've got Watford Plumbing on here as an example of if a repair is needed in a property in Watford, the location is tagged as Watford, it could go to Watford Plumbing. If it's tagged as Reading, it could go to Reading Plumbers, for instance. However, you can also use it for internal communication. So you could tag the planning team. Further works are needed, goes to planning team. If an emergency is required, it can go to a different department and so on. And so this is where Teams is where you can build out your company profile in terms of your setup, but also any contractors or third parties that you're looking to use. And that all goes into workflows. So workflows, we have a few different options in here. So for instance, this is an emergency dispatch one. You can add a workflow, name it, use the trigger of report generated session started or session finished. Report generated is the most common, and then you can then utilize those locations. So you can use the location, drop that down. If we looking at Watford, you want services, so you got the type of issue that it was around. And then you can go, well, okay, well, what I want to do is send an email to an engineer, or sorry, to a team. Watford Plumbing, please go to the property. And then you've got certain variables you can tag in as well. So within the main body of the email, you can include things like a copy of the recording between an engineer and the resident, a copy of the call report itself, as well as many other things. We then have call sessions. So a session is a 24-hour period. So from the session being started, you have 24 hours to use the link for reports to be filed under that session and effectively deal with that single repair. So in here, what you'll see is that there's potentially multiple different calls or interactions had within a session. So where it might be a resident talking to AI diagnoses the problem or suggests that further works are needed or further oversight is needed. It could go through to video, and the next one along could be the video session, the video call within that same session. So the sessions is our way of grouping together a repair and a way of our clients then coming back in, checking down, and then you can view the report, view any attachments or call recording as needed as well. So you can see a lot from the session as to what happened with that repair, and again use that as a single point of truth for your information based on the repair itself and the interaction with the Help Me Fix service. We have the engineer app in here, so that will just launch our engineer application, which I will come on to in a little while. We have payment history, so a client can check their payment history, and then we've got settings. So setting gives us lots of other information. So the account holder's details, so effectively the account owner information, including things such as where to send invoices, where to send call reports, payment methods. So a client who has come in autonomously can add a new payment method and set up a subscription, and then the subscription will show in the subscriptions field. The client can add their own logo and branding, so pop in a picture. They can use their brand colors and select any color they choose. We also have a little dropper that comes in really handy that they can pick and make sure they've got the right color in there. Change the text, change anything that they need, and then they can see what that's going to look like, and that just helps them brand it out on their own. We have app configuration. So this is where the client can give Aidan some additional instructions just to make sure that Aidan is abiding by appropriate guidance for that individual. So however that individual wishes to work. They can change their welcome message within Aidan. They've got a resident facing link. So if they just wanted to use, for instance, we have PRS clients who will have this available to their residents on the website. So rather than sending a specific link from properties, they can then create themselves as a resident and carry on with the chat. Same with the embed code. You can embed that on your website or into a pop-up box or something, into an iframe, and that will be present and available to customers. We then have an internal Aidan. So internal Aidan works slightly differently in so much as it will go through issues knowing it's talking with a property manager, somebody from housing, an engineer, just so that it will take them through things in a bit more detail. It understands that there's a filter before it goes to a customer, and this is really what we see as an internal support. We have insurance clients using it at the moment to help their contact centre guide residents through problems over the phone before going through to something like video, or even going on to the repair, just to try and ensure that they get that first time fix done. There's many other things in here as well. So we've got job reports, so you can specify the different template of job reports in call settings, where you can say confirm whether you wish to divert to our engineer network or not. Resources, so a client can add a resource in here, things like their repairs policies, emergency requests, etc. The system will allow also for webhooks to be added. So for instance, when a job report is produced, it could fire a webhook, and the client can create their own webhook and API key in here to fire that across. The same goes the other way around as well. So we have obviously an API access where the client can use their our API key to connect their system as well. Users is where a customer can add and remove their users. So if they have admin that's going to come in and be the one sending links, they can add them in here. Similarly, if they have internal engineers or field engineers, they can add these in, and within that they can also specify the priority. So priority routing means that effectively you can have one group of individuals ringing on video before it going through to the next priority 2. and then ultimately potentially pinging out to our engineer network as well. So you can add a user very simply, first name, last name, email, add the role, add and specify a service category if that's applicable as well. So for instance, where you've got a qualified gas engineer, you can add in the gas category for that individual, and just ensure that that's working for them. Whenever you're adding somebody, they'll receive an email. So they will receive an email that asks them to log in and set their password. So obviously then within settings, you've got other such things as change password and delete account. Now, moving on from Contact Hub, let's talk about Aiden. So Aiden is our AI repairs assistant, which helps residents to self-solve problems, understands the problem better, helps contact centres and planning teams understand the problem better, to try and ensure that they're getting through to that first time fix. It's connected to real world information, as well as other connected skills as well. So we connect it to the property match API, which means we can bring down the latitude and longitude. From that, we can get the weather data in that area. We also connect it to the EPC register, so it can pull down the EPC data to understand the energy performance of that property, if it's the construction type, if it's single skin, etc., if it's got insulation or if insulation is required and needing to be added, etc. It can analyze pictures. So here's a very good example of that, where the resident is talking to Aiden. Aiden asks for a picture. It pulls down the picture, it analyzes that, and it pulls the fault code off the boiler. From that, it looks through its data bank of tens of thousands of help me fix reports, to see what has been done with that type of issue before and how to best guide that resident. So here it's guiding the resident on topping up the pressure on the boiler. In this case, it's asking, well, let me know if you need any guidance. The resident asks for that, and Aiden offers some videos. So Aiden then can pull down 3 videos of how to repressurize this type of boiler, and present those to the resident for solving that problem and for further guidance. We can also link to specific YouTube channels, so that allows for our clients to have somebody in their own branded livery, talking through a problem. This is how you can repressurize this boiler, and we can connect it to that channel. In this case, solve the problem, nice and simple. Here's another example. It goes into a little bit more depth and a bit more detail. Can you explain the issue? Upload a photo. My shower stopped working. Here's a picture of my shower. So Aiden has identified that this is an electric power shower unit. So it has determined what could possibly be going on. In this case, it does get a tiny bit confused. This is where AI does need a few checks and balances, but it thinks this black spot here is where it's disconnected from the wall. So it's just the resident making sure that they're keeping up to date and updating that accordingly. So in here, Aiden can ask clarifying questions, so it'll understand the problem, make sure that it's got to the bottom of it by understanding using some clarification questions, and offering some more information. So for instance, here the resident said it's made a grinding noise. It might be that it needs replacement if there's a potential internal fault, but let's just make sure that you've done all the correct checks, so that we've got to the bottom of the problem as quickly as possible. So again, residents checked all the things, can't see any issues. Okay, let's file a report. It's likely to be an internal fault. And so that then Aiden has the ability to file a job report. So here is an example. Here is the job report that is linked to that example from Aiden. This is the same report, same template for anybody really. So if it's a video engineer or Aiden, it will file the same report. You can customize reports, as I've touched upon very, very briefly when I'm going through Contact Hub, and Aiden will, of course, fill in any fields that are included on the customized report as well. So it includes things such as ID, so if you give them the property ID, tenant resident name and address, the fact that it's Aiden that's completing the report. Then it goes into certain details. So it's a plumbing issue. This is the time and date of when it happened. And then we look at certain things. So was the issue resolved? This is our outcome metric, which helps us to determine the success that we've had with clients. We have 4 different outcomes, which is issue permanently resolved, temporarily resolved, diagnosed, and no resolve. And we report to clients based on that metric. Here gives the report by the engineer. So Aidan has summarized the conversation, talking about anything that they've done to try and ensure that the issue is resolved. We then have triggers of further works required. So if a further work is required, that could trigger a certain workflow within Contact Hub. And if further works are needed, Aidan or the engineer has to put in more information down the bottom here, what needs to happen next. We then have whether or not it's an emergency dispatch required. And again, emergencies can trigger different workflows depending on the urgency of an issue or the area that it's in, or the category type as well. So here we have a description of what needs to happen next. And then we look at our scheduler rates integration. So this is where we have a partnership with M3 Scheduler Rates, and we can pull down the standard schedule, either offering it as an add-on to clients if they don't currently have a license, or if they have a license, it comes as part of the package. So in here, Aidan has made or identified potential solutions to the problem and given options for SOR codes that could link to what might be required within that property based on the conversation that's been had. So this helps planners to say, well, actually, look, I've looked at the chat, looked at the report, it's going to be 830005. Let's overhaul that electric shower. We also have a part finder function. So Aidan is connected with specific stockists, which and will pull down any appropriate parts and provide those as a link to clients. So they can click on those, go straight through to the stockist, and order them straight away if need be. The client also has a link to the chat, so they click on that and it goes straight back into the chat transcript, so they can see the full conversation. And any pictures that the resident has uploaded to Aidan will be available on the report as well. So there is Aidan and what it can do. There's many things that we're currently working on as well. So we are looking at things such as power cut finders. Water outages is another one that's been raised, not currently on the roadmap, but it's a good idea. And there's many other things that we're looking at for Aidan to make improvements as we run. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly show you how our call environment works. So in here, sorry, bear with me. There you go. So we provide our video platform as a software-only service, but we do have a human backup as well. So this is an example of the software-only service, where we can provide a web link for our engineer application, where an engineer can come and they can log on their PC. They can set themselves as available, set a weekly planner, and utilize the service for that client. We also provide web apps, native apps, so that the client can download an application to their phone, or the engineer can download an application to their phone and use the application on a mobile device. So here we have our engineer application, and I'll kind of run through that in just a second. On the right hand side here, we have what we call the call environment. So this is a web app, which the resident accesses via a link. So that link that we referenced back from Contact Hub, you can send that to a customer. That's also obtainable through integration. So an integration can fire a link across to a resident, or indeed an integration can retrieve that link, and then that client's own system can send that to a customer. So there's lots of different ways that a customer could receive a link, but effectively this is how the system is accessed. So the resident gets a link, they either click on it and go through to Aiden or go through to a call environment, depending on which one that's been achieved. Another key point here is that Aiden can also escalate through to video. So where Aiden has identified an urgent or an emergency issue or a normal issue, and we can set that up by client. So it's where it's identified an issue that hasn't been able to solve, but further assistance may be beneficial. Aiden can also produce a link to then escalate through to video. So this web app is branded to the customer. Again, that pulls through from Contact Hub. The resident can choose their spoken language. So for instance, if they chose French, at the moment, it doesn't change the language within the application, but captions will open up on the resident side and the engineer side, and any spoken French will translate into written English and vice versa. So what I'm going to do now is select one of our categories. So this is a general link. So the resident comes in and selects the category that their issue falls under. We can also issue peer-to-peer links. So the resident has the organization has the ability to issue a peer-to-peer link so that the resident will only connect back with that one individual. And in that sense, you just get the category that operative is active under. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to contact through in plumbing, go through checks. So it checks the video. If it's on mobile, it will turn it around and check the other screen as well. Does an audio test, and then it does an internet speed test. The resident has to accept terms and conditions and privacy policy, and then clicks on connect. So from the point of clicking connect, what happens is dependent on the link. Peer-to-peer will go straight through to one individual. If it is an internal, if they have an internal group set up or internal group of engineers set up, it will ping through those engineers. So it will pick one in the appropriate category, add another one after 5 seconds, and then a third, and then a fourth, until you reach critical mass. What happens then is it then runs through the hierarchy: priority 1, priority 2, and then potentially engineer network. If clients don't have their own internal workforce or just want to come straight through to the help me fix network, you can effectively not have anybody in those first priorities, and it will automatically connect through to one of the network engineers. The average time for a network engineer to answer is about 30 seconds. So from this point, our residents find that it's about 30 seconds for somebody to answer the call. So I'm going to click on connect, and it should just ring through very quickly through on the engineer application. There is also noise following your you might see this pop up down the bottom here. We're actually for the, so I'm just going to take that before anybody else does and connect to the call. So the first thing to notice is the engineer background is branded to our clients as well. So the engineer can set up their own background. As a standard, it is blurred, but again, you can add anything in the background you wish. My video is a tiny bit slow, I think, because I've got so many video streams going, and including recording this as well. So on the resident side, they have a countdown timer, so we can set limits of how much time each customer has to deal with their problem. They have the standard mute mic, turn camera off, end call. They also have a few different buttons at the top here. They have chat, so they can open chat and they can send a message through to the engineer. They have captions, so they can turn the captions on and off. And if I was on a mobile device at the bottom here, it would have turn camera around so that I can show the engineer the problem. So that's the resident side of things. Now, if you look at the engineer side on the left here, obviously you've got the customer in big and the engineer up in the top corner. They also have the chat function. So they have the ability to go backwards and forwards. This is mainly used by our engineers to ask for clearer pictures of things or to support after the call. So after the call, they have the ability to check that something has worked and just make sure that that customer has that additional support. Engineers on the desktop version also have Aiden available to them. So they can ask Aiden for support through an issue. They can ask Aiden questions on the property itself. I'm now going to see whether or not I connected it to an actual property. I did, fantastic. So here we have an example of the address that where the resident is. the property ID, the UPRN of the property, so latitude and longitude. You can then drill down to obtain things such as the EPC information, and you can even ask for the weather, what the weather's doing in the property. Again, we're working on other things as well to add into here that can be utilized by our clients, but it's just working away with API connections. There we go, it's popped in. So it tells us what type of installations at the property, ventilation that's there, approximate age of build, what type of property it is, etc. So it's really good information for engineers to have. And what we're seeing this really appealing to is customers who are potentially looking at using this for damp and mold or surveys to properties, so they can really put all of the information in one place. You can also do things such as ask for advice. And very, very much like the resident version of Aiden, this internal version of Aiden will ask clarification questions and try and work through the problem. What I am going to do is, whilst I'm showing you the rest of the platform, is I will quickly upload that same fault on the Valent boiler, and we'll come back to that in just a second. It will go away, it will analyze that picture for the engineer and provide that back to the engineer. One key thing to say is that obviously this does not show to the resident, so any conversation being had with the internal version of Aiden will stay unique to that engineer. So here we have an example of kind of the additional steps that Aiden goes through. It's identified the type of boiler, the code, what that normally means. So step-by-step guidance to an operative. Okay, let's just double check that it's definitely the F22, that it hasn't read it wrong. Let's try and locate the pressure gauge, assess the pressure, and really step-by-step guidance on how an internal engineer through the video can talk with the resident through the problem. We also have SOR available in here, so you can ask for an SOR code. Let's see if it's if this pulls back what I normally get from it, but we'll see if what happens there. But it will go away, find an SOR code, and present it back to the user. We then have screen capture, so the engineers can take pictures during the course of their call to help build out a report, and that comes down into their camera roll or downloads. You have trade divert, so if it came through in plumbing but actually it's gone through a fitting, a light fitting for instance, leaks come through a fitting, so you might want to transfer it out to electrical. You've got captions, so the engineer can turn captions on and off, just like the resident. And you also have draw on screen. So draw on screen, you can it pauses the screen usually on both sides. They can go, right, can you concentrate on this area? You can save that down, or this is potentially the area for mold wash. Save that down, or send that through to the resident. Perfect, there we go. So the resident can see that. I think I've got a slight caching problem at the moment, but it should normally freeze both screens. Then we have the standard mute mic, turn camera on and off, end the call. It tells the engineer what the tenant's name is and the category it's come under, and tells the engineer how long they've had on the call. We also have an internal incentivization tool. So this will allow for organizations to encourage their engineers to be taking internal calls to make things a tiny bit cheaper for the organization, but effectively it can be incentivization for engineers to take calls potentially even out of hours, where they can downgrade emergencies and help each other out within the organization. So at the end of the call, the resident and the engineer asks for smiley face feedback, excellent, okay, and bad, and if it was bad, why was it bad? And both the engineer and resident kind of can be asked those questions. These are standard questions, we can't change these, but we can report back to the client based on this smiley face feedback. So if we look at the engineer will then build out the report. What they can do is go back into chat. They can pull any pictures down from chat they wish. They can go back into the Aiden conversation to look back over any information that they need. But then this is again where the report can be customized to individual organizations. But as a standard, you've got additional work required. If the call ended due to bad connection, that sends an SMS to the customer asking them to reconnect with that engineer. But they can select, for instance, additional work required, if it's an emergency or not. Was the issue resolved? You might diagnose the problem. What happened during the course of the call? What needs to happen next? Attach any photos from the conversation and go into your library and attachment from the library as well. So there's many things that video can be used for. What we're seeing most with all clients is emergency qualification and de-escalation. Obviously trying to solve problems, helping residents and organizations to reduce down the kind of the amount of issues that they are having to deal with. And we're also seeing it being used by others for things such as surveys and so on.